of Comet Ison taken from the Hubble telescope on October 9th while the government was shut down. These guys explain how they download the pictures on October 9th, and then they go through what you're seeing in the pictures. These obviously are the new pictures of Comet Ison in different filters. So instead of me trying to explain it to you guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some clips of the hangout that they had today on the 17th, explaining these new pictures that you're looking at here on screen, and you know, how they took them and everything. I suggest you guys go to the link under this video, look at that video yourself of what they talked about. The full video is 58 minutes. What I've tried to do in this video is take key points of that video and put them together here so you can see quickly, in a quicker amount of time, exactly what they're talking about you're looking at in these pictures. They break it down better than I can, guys. So we're going to get on over to that clip of the Ison Hangout. Again, all the video links to the pictures, the Ison Hangout, is under this video, guys. I told you that I would update you when something new came out about Ison. Well, something new just come out about Ison. Anyway, guys, you have a blessed day and many blessings and much love to you all out there. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so let's talk about the image. First of all, Zolt, do you have some handy that we can take a look at here?
I have an image handy. Let me go ahead
I knew somehow that you might.
I know.
Let me go ahead and share my screen.
So while he's doing that, Max, these images were taken when exactly?
That was last week, kind of in the middle of the night, October 8th, October 9th, right in there. And it was kind of funny because a lot of us were at a meeting in Denver, John Yang Lee and myself and a number of other people who are using Hubble to study Ison. So, you know, that's just a reality in science, is that most of your collaborators are elsewhere, and often you're working together from a great distance. So it was actually pretty cool to actually all be in the same hotel. You know, it's it was coming down.
So you guys are watching it as they're coming down and processing it as quickly as you can, right?
Yeah, getting our first quick look, and it was quite fun to actually be together to experience that, which is actually, it might be surprising to your audience to realize how rare that is.
Yeah. Did you have bets on how it was going to look like?
No bets, really. I think we, you know, I would say we weren't too surprised. You know, obviously, I think we're getting into, you know, the fact that there was some speculation about what we were going to see.
Right.
But we weren't the ones doing that speculating. I think none of us were too surprised with what we saw.
Okay, Zolt, so here you have it up now. This is the press release image, right? The one that we put out today?
This is the press release image that we put out today. So this is a color composite. It's a composite of two observations in two filters, a blue filter and a red filter or infrared filter. And it shows a little bit of color. It's kind of the color that we would expect. I think maybe other people can expand on that a little bit. You notice there's no stars in it. The stars have been removed. They're moving during the exposures and between the exposures, and Max we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit. The processing, we've talked about that before, that in this way we process the images, the stars are removed. And so there you have it. I guess the news from the image, the first thing you notice is that the nucleus is still a nucleus. And there was some reports that some evidence that the comet may have broken up, but it looks like from our image, at least at the resolution that we have, which is the best available, the comet is still intact. The nucleus is still intact. The tail is much bigger than it was before, and it looks like a comet.
Do we have a sense of the exposure times on these images?
What were the times,
well,
Max? They were tens of minutes.
Yeah, and two filters. Well, for the 775 filter, it was 348 seconds, and I think we got something more like times 2, and then something more like 500 seconds for the B filter times 2. So that's the total amount of exposure time we had.
Okay. So, Bonnie, do you have any comments on this? What does this tell you? What do you think about what Hubble's seeing? You're muted, I think.
You're muted, yeah.
Oh, I'm muted. Okay. I think what we're seeing here is something that's not too unexpected, and I think it's funny that with all the hoopla over this whole thing, that it turns out to be just coasting along, fizzing along, and
Just
I think
being a comet, being its
Yeah.
comet itself.
being itself. And so it's overhyped, it's underhyped. People can't make up their minds about what they want it to be, and just let it be what it is.
Oh, let it.
It's awesome. That's just all it is. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a comet. It's going to
Let
be
it-
cool no matter what.
Let it be a comet, people. John Yang, what about? Do you have any comments on this? Did you have any expectations prior to these images of what the comet might be like?
Well, not much expectation. Although I did hope that the comet is behaving, but from the images we see that it's a still very nice comet, and as Zolt said, it's much bigger now. And I want to point out one thing. If you compare this image, if you still remember what the April image looks like, the direction of the tail actually changed.
Oh, Zolt, you have an image that kind of illustrates that, don't you?
I do. Here's the comparison. Now this on the right is the current October image. On the left is an image from the May observations. And these are as close as I could get. These are intensity scaled equivalently and spatially scaled equivalently. So they should be a pretty much apples to apples comparison. The only difference really is that they're taken with two different filters.
Right. And I think in the two images you show here, they are displayed in different orientations. But if you rotate them both to north up, like the same sky orientation, you'll notice that the direction of the tail actually flipped. That's because the Earth is now on the other side of the Sun compared to.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So wait, say that. So I see what you're saying. You're saying the tail is flipped to the other side.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think what this really illustrates well is just the change in the brightness and size, apparent size, because everything else is the same, right, Zolt?
Yeah, it should be as close as I could get. So I wanted to show that yeah, as far as we can tell, the nucleus is still intact. So this is zoomed way up. As you can see, the bar is 100 pixels long, which is 4 arc seconds in this camera. Mm-hmm. And at the distance of the comet, that's 5,500 kilometers is the bar. So that's a 100 pixel long bar. So each pixel is 55 kilometers.
I also see Max as an image, actually, a different color scale, I think, right, Max?
Yeah, I was just looking at the actual data where you can see it's sitting on the camera, and just for reference, this is the wide field camera 3, which is roughly 4,000 by 4,000 pixels, and you can see that the tail clearly goes off the edge of the chip here. So even just the the tail that you can see here would be 4,000 times 55 kilometers would be over 200,000 kilometers that you see just here. And of course, the tail goes off the edge, and we know from other ground-based images that the tail is quite long and it tapers off. So it's a little difficult to say where the tail ends, but certainly just in the image, what you're seeing here in the Hubble image is on the order of, I guess, 200,000 kilometers.
I see. So, but actually, these images are very telling, because I think there were a lot of speculation about exactly how the comet would emerge after perihelion, and so it looks like the nucleus is pretty compact. So what does that tell us about the composition of the comet?
Well, it's obviously not as the loose rubble pile, that maybe some people thought, that it's just ready to fall apart even before it encounters the sun. And of course, this is what Hubble can do best: is examine the nucleus up close with high sensitivity and high resolution. And if anything were falling off of there, if it was crumbling or disintegrating at all, we would definitely see it clearly. We've done this before with Hubble, witnessed this, and so obviously we're not seeing that. And so it does seem to say something about, the integrity of the nucleus, that it's not maybe as fragile as some people had thought. It's certainly not beginning to fall apart. Doesn't really say much about what's going to happen next. There's been some good analysis about, the likelihood that it will now survive its close encounter with the sun, but I think we'll just have to wait and see.
There was a lot of unknowns going into this, so we didn't know for sure if the comet was, how loosely packed, like we said, whether it was going to break up, or even if it was going to survive perihelion. And I think now, and Bonnie and John Yang, you can comment on this if you want to. I think that's not expected to happen now, correct? In other words, break up as it goes around the sun. It's supposed to stay intact, correct?
Well,
Right. Go ahead, John.
Oh, Well, I would say that it doesn't happen now, but the possibility will still exists as it moves closer, kind of closer to the sun, especially when it's nearest to the sun. That's where the heat, the heat is the strongest and the gravity is strongest. So
Okay.
it's still hard to predict what happened. But I have a colleague, Matthew Knight and Kevin Walsh. They did some very nice studies, very detailed studies about the possibility of for this comet to break up during the perihelion passage. And their result is that the possibility is small.
There was some speculation that there might be some jets or some sort of material coming off of the comet, and I think you've got some more information on that, correct?
That's right. Yeah, if you remember, in the April image, after we did some enhancement, we can clearly see a jet in the sunward direction, and from that, based on that jet, we actually determine where the spin pole of the comet was. So after the comet goes behind the sun for several months, now Hubble gets to take a look at it again, and then everybody is curious about whether the jet is still there and how does it look like. So we use these new images as shown on the screen now.
Yeah, this is what Max is showing now. I've got it up, so go ahead and feel free to describe it.
Yeah, thank you. So we did the same processing for the images, and then we look at the sunward direction, and then there's nothing there in this image. There's no jet in the sunward direction, and it doesn't say the jet is gone, completely gone. It just says that we do not see this jet in the same direction as.
Okay. So you found that there's no jet, and this image is what you're using to explain why that is. What is this image we're looking at? Can you describe what it is?
Oh yes, yeah. So obviously the upper panel is the image that we started to work with, the original Hubble image. And then second image, we did the enhancement. The way we did the enhancement is that we assume a Comet model, which is like the average of all the comets, and then we subtract out that model. And that model we subtract out is symmetric with respect to the center. So if there's any asymmetry, like enhancement of a jet in the sunward direction, then it will show up.
So this comet so far been going along just fine. Not a whole lot of surprises here. Do you have any? Was there anything about the Hubble observations that you found particularly surprising or interesting about what's happening with the comet now?
Well, I think that the most interesting thing is that we don't see that jet anymore, and that being able to see this jet depends a lot on careful modeling.
I was just trying to illustrate a little bit what John Yang was talking about. So right now I'm showing like the image, my attempt to make the cleanest image that I could make to get rid of, in previous Hangouts we talked. I'll back up a little bit here to show some of the messy images with cosmic rays and star trails. And so it was my job to kind of make the cleanest image I could from all the input images, and that's what I gave to John Yang Lee, and he applied his model. So I'm just sort of blinking back and forth between my clean image and then where his model has been applied. So I was just sort of showing the difference there of his, once he subtracts his model, and it just allows us to reveal what's going on, especially in close to the nucleus.
So which is which? What's that?
This is John Yang Lee's model subtracted version of my clean image, and this is my clean image. So I'm just toggling back and forth.
Okay.
And you can see how much more you can see once John Yang has done his processing. You can really see in towards the nucleus much more clearly, and in particular that there is no sunward jet there, like we saw so clearly in his earlier observation back in April.
Okay, I'm glad this is a good time to talk about one of the things that we had mentioned earlier, I think in one of our meetings. Go back to the other image, the one you just had up. The one with the star trails in it a little bit. This one. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and we're gonna let people are going to be downloading Hubble data. They're going to presumably see some of these things. Let's identify what these are now, and so we can get all the questions answered and all the conspiracies dealt with front. Okay.
So anyone watching the Hangout on Google Plus, I did post that image there live. So if you want to see full quality of it, you can go into the Hangout event as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of stuff here. Why don't you explain all these things? What are all these the streaks and the spikes and everything else?
Yeah, so for this one filter, this is the F775W filter. We only got 2 exposures in each filter. So what I'm doing right now is just toggling back and forth between those 2 exposures. So you get a sense of a couple things. You certainly see the comet, but you also notice star trails. Those are those parallel lines. You get a real sense of motion here, that we're tracking a moving object, because those streaks you see, those parallel streaks, are stars in the background. And of course, if we're tracking the comet and we take a couple 100-second exposure, the stars become streaks. And then you also see a random assortment of cosmic rays in each image, but of course it's different cosmic rays in each image. And you also notice some things about the camera. The camera has 2 chips, so that's why there's that dark streak running through the middle of it. But you might also notice that that dark streak shifts a little bit. We do that intentionally. That's called dithering, such that when we combine the exposures. So now I'm going to display just a simple combination of those exposures, and you see that the gaps don't overlap. So the images sort of fill in each other's gaps, and you really see all the star streaks and all the cosmic rays together here.
And you can also see the difference in angle of the star trails as well from the different exposures. So as Hubble followed the comet, those stars, which were points, got smeared across the CCD. So
that's right. So then we have software to combine the images in a way that actually cleans out all those artifacts. And so after doing that, just here's sort of a before and after. And you can see that because we only took 2 exposures, we can't actually reject the artifacts that are in the gaps there that run at that diagonal there running through the image. So I do apply another step. 2 images is not great. We like to get 3 or 4 or even 5 to really clean up an image. In this case, we only had 1 Hubble orbit to work with, and we're trying to get 2 filters. So we could only get 2 exposures. So you'll see that even when I've cleaned up the image, there's still a fair amount of residual cosmic rays, and even you can still see a hint of the star trails. So it's tough to clean it all up. I did apply a next step here where you can see I'm just toggling now. That kind of gets those residuals, which we know are just cosmic rays. Again, you might look at this and say, hey, isn't the comet breaking up? Look at all those little particles. But no, we know that those are just residual cosmic rays that we cannot. Now, I'm going to do something a little funny. In DS9, of course, we can use any color lookup table. I happen to be using a blue one here because it just helps my eye see things.
DS9 is the viewer he's using, folks. That's what that is.
That's right, for displaying FITS data. Not looking at a JPEG image here. This is the actual FITS data. And I'm just going to switch to a rather psychedelic one, just because it kind of emphasizes even further some of these artifacts. So this is the cleanest image that I could generate. And when I switch to this kind of psychedelic, for one thing, you can kind of see the extent of the tail running off of the chip. But you can still see hints of those residual cosmic rays and star trails sitting there. So again, that's not something to get too excited about. They're kind of running all throughout here. We understand them. They're just star trails and bright cosmic rays. And then, of course, the noisiness of this chip gap that runs through at a diagonal. And I'll just switch back to the cool. This is called cool.
Those are not spaceships hiding behind the comet or
that's right.
Anything
There's
like
just,
that.
We understand all these artifacts. There's nothing to see here, folks. Move along.
Please move along. Yes. Okay,
and then, of course, the last thing again is taking this clean image. John Yang was able to generate this model subtracted image, which he did very quickly at this meeting last week that we were at in Denver, and it was pretty cool. Within a few hours, he was able to realize that there was no jet there, and again, that's other than the fact that the comet is still intact, I would say maybe that's the most interesting and relevant result. The fact that we don't see that jet that John Yang saw back in April.